Hello there, Margarita Alcantara here, activator for the new code of power, a keeper of the blue flame, and I also carry the consciousness of oneness codes. And welcome to the Rise Up with Margarita show, which is such a powerful weekly show that I offer every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Eastern Time, I think it's just now called during summertime. And so every single week I present a topic where I go deep diving into something that will really serve you on a higher level as a light worker so that you can rise up and feel like you've got tools and also really be able to help you cultivate that mindset that you require so that you can rise higher. So today's topic is how being in your sovereignty transforms your fear as a light worker. And this is such an important topic, this topic of sovereignty, this aspect of really connecting with the fullness of your divine aspect of self, right? And so the topic of today is how being in your sovereignty transforms your fear as a light worker. So everything is going to be really focused on that level. So just putting it out there for some of you who are new and who might be just checking this out for the first time. And so I'll be checking out, sharing with you some ways on, first of all, telling you what sovereignty is about, what that is, what being in your sovereignty even looks like, and why it's vital for light workers now to be connected to it. And then how to transform your fear into sovereignty, which is the whole topic of today's conversation, right? And so, first of all, if we haven't met yet, my name's Margarita Alcantara, and I help activate spiritually conscious entrepreneurs into the next level of their power. And usually spiritually conscious entrepreneurs, they usually are light workers, visionary leaders of light. And so if that's you, you are in the right place today. And so here is what sovereignty is. I'm just going to get right into it because, as many of you know, I'm pretty direct with things. So sovereignty, it is such a powerful, I was about to say concept, but it really is an experience. And Lisa Renee put it best, which is why I shared it in one of my posts last week around what sovereignty is. And so I'm just going to read that to you. Self-ownership, or sovereignty of the individual sovereignty, or individual autonomy, is the concept of property in one's own person, expressed as the moral or natural right of a person to have bodily integrity and be the exclusive controller of her or his own life, as well as body, mind, and spirit. And so that is a definition on sovereignty that I took from Lisa Renee because she put it really, really well. And if you're not familiar with her work, Google it and you'll be really connected to some really powerful information. So I wanted to share sovereignty in that terminology so that you really have an understanding of what sovereignty is, because I do get that question a lot about what sovereignty is. So I wanted to have this very clear definition and share that with you first of all, so you know what we're working with, right? And if you are doing your inner work as a light worker, as a visionary leader of light, then this is a term that you're probably familiar with already. I get that for some, it's a rather new word, and so that's totally fine too. So what being your sovereignty looks like, because for some it just feels like a concept, right, that has no meaning to them. But here's how sovereignty shows up in your life. When you are acting in your sovereignty as a full divine human being connected to their powerful potential. So that can look like making your own choices for what you want to be experiencing in life, for what you want to put in your body, for what you want to create in the world. And you know that no one else is going to do that for you but you. So that's an aspect of sovereignty, really taking kind of ownership of who we are as spiritual beings on this planet, right? And really taking ownership of our experience and of our creation, that we are here to create. Lovesick Sophie is saying the timing, just randomly felt the need to check social media. And yeah, not a coincidence. And it's really funny because a lot of light workers share this, and this is totally relevant to this topic, by the way. They share, wow, I just happened to catch you and I'm moving through this right now. And so it's not a coincidence, right? Like everything that you are looking for, requiring to have support in your life in general, you will be connected to whatever that is that you're going to need to up level, right? So if you are connecting with me now, know that you're getting what you are looking for right now. Okay. So that's one way being in your sovereignty can look like in your life, like on a physical level, so that you can kind of see, okay, am I in my sovereignty or not? That's one way. Another way is you know your power comes from within you, not because someone gave you permission to have it, right? Because I'm seeing a lot of that going on where people are like, oh, well, this person says I'm, this person says I can have my power if I do certain things, right? Or, me being in my power is dependent on outside forces, outside experiences and situations, right? When you're in your sovereignty, you are connected to the fact that that is within you and it doesn't come from outside of you. Like no one can give you permission to be in your power, right? Like you must give yourself permission to be in your power. Ahuja is sharing love your content. I appreciate that, and I'm glad you're here. So it comes from within you. Your power comes from within you, right? It doesn't come because someone else said, okay, now you can go access that. It doesn't matter what other people say, right? It matters what you say to yourself and what you create in your own life. That's what matters. So that's another way how sovereignty can look like in your life. It reflects in your life too, in your relationships, meaning, if you're in your sovereignty, then you're going to have fulfilling relationships romantically, platonically. And if you're not, then the opposite would probably be true. You'd probably feel disempowered in some relationships, right? Also, what you do for a living can be very much a reflection of if you're in your sovereignty or not. So for instance, if you're doing something that, is your life's work, your purpose, right? And that is what's bringing you income and you're in your alignment, then yes, you're in your sovereignty around that, right? If there's stuff there that does not feel aligned or it's connected to fear, that is not aligned and most likely not part of your sovereignty. Also your health, right? If you are in your sovereignty around your health, you are in a place in regards to your health that you are feeling good about. And if you're not, then, most likely you aren't in your sovereignty when it comes in regards to your health. It can also reflect in your money and how you receive money or not in regards to your wealth, right? And I know light workers really don't like to talk about money, but I'm going to talk about money, okay? Because it's there, it's an energy, it's not evil or out to get you, it's completely neutral, and it's just a tool for light workers to show up in a higher way. And so when it comes to your wealth and money, when you're in your sovereignty, you are making aligned money that is not only, feeding your soul, feeding your spirit, helping you elevate in terms of your work, in terms of how you are upgrading yourself, because that can look like taking certain certifications or taking some classes or, whatever else that you feel you need to do to upgrade yourself, right? That's you investing in yourself. Or it could look like you upgrading the experience of your clients. So, that can look like offering something that maybe you normally wouldn't have because you are so abundant and connected to that wealth consciousness within yourself, and you're sharing that with your clients in an upgraded way so that they can have an elevated experience, right? So that's what can happen when you're in your sovereignty around your wealth. And you're been there, done that with the old paradigm energy around wealth, which is very much about manipulation and greed and using people and, that kind of thing, which has nothing to do with what us light workers are here to experience. It's about being in our full abundance on all levels, which does also include the money. And so another aspect around sovereignty is around fulfilling your purpose in the world that you incarnated on this planet to do. So that means that when you're in your sovereignty, you are in your purpose, living your purpose, feeling fulfilled with your purpose. And when I say living your purpose, like you're actually doing it, implementing it in the world, like you're not just talking about it, you're not wishing about it, you're implementing it, you're living it, you're breathing it, you're providing it, right? And when you are in service, being in fulfillment of your purpose in the world, you're actually showing up, with your offerings, providing them in the world and in a higher way, right? Because we're all light workers, we're all being invited to elevate in a higher way. And so this is what the whole Rise Up with Margarita show that, you're joining me on today is all about, is really how do you get to rise up? How do we get to rise up together? How do we get to be in unification with ourselves and with the collective so that we can get our job done, right? So those are some examples of what it looks like when you're in your sovereignty. And here now is why it's vital for light workers to be connected to it right now. So, and if you see me looking over here, it's because I made some notes because I wanted to stay on point for you today. And so one of these vital things of why it's really important for you to be connected to your sovereignty now is because too many light workers are still stuck in their fear, their trauma, their feelings of worthlessness, and the stories that have happened to them in past lives. And I know this to be true, not only because, many years ago I had gone through that in terms of my own personal initiation many years ago, but so many of my clients and those that I speak with on the phone are moving through that right now. And so this is not something I'm just kind of making up here. It is something that I personally experienced and that I know that so many of you are experiencing too. So when you are stuck in your fears and your traumas and all this past life stuff and all this stuff that keeps you connected in the 3D, then it actually, you are operating from an unhealed state, which then opens your energy field up for manipulations by negative energies and negative forces, such as the fear that's being purposely pumped out in society, right? Like fear this, fear that, fear yourself, fear others, fear God, right? And all of this programming that is happening in the world, it is part of that toxic frequency that we are all receiving right now. And that is why right now more than ever, it is so important for you to connect with who you really are, not your fears, because that's not the truth of who you are. Like you may be moving through it, right? But you may have heard that saying, what you have experienced in terms of, or what your trauma is, doesn't, or what you've experienced with your trauma does not define you. I mean, it might define how you've chosen to live your life, but it does not shape you as like, oh, okay, wow, she experienced this experience and she's a bad person, right? It's like, it's none of that. When you transform that, and instead of living from fear and believing all the fear that's being pumped into our veins right now through social media, through mainstream news and all that, and you literally are operating from your own sovereignty and you're connected with your own truth, that's everything. Because then you are untouchable. Then you are untouchable. And I don't mean like in a love sense, right? You always want to be connected to love. And that's the whole point of sovereignty, right? Connecting with a love for yourself, with a love for Creator, God, Great Spirit, universe, however you want to call it. And that's really, really important. And I'm not making this part up either, right? Because a lot of people, I've witnessed this, and I've actually helped some of my clients transform all this trauma stuff that they've experienced, whether it be on an ancestral generational level, whether it be through past life stuff, whatever it was, or maybe it was some starseed trauma, like I help my clients, those who are, serious about being deeply transformed and connected to their sovereignty. I help them transform that because I'm also a shamanic practitioner. So I actually, move through that and provide some healing work before the activation portions of our work together. So that's one big reason why it's vital for light workers now to be connected to their sovereignty. Hey, Jennifer. Yes, she says, yes, and working with you was just what I need to level up. Hearts to you. Yeah. So much love to you, Jennifer. So good to see you here. Thank you so much. Another thing why it's vital for light workers now to be connected to it. Too many light workers are who are just either waking up or have been somewhat awake, but still believing the old paradigm as being alive. Understand that your fear of what you don't want to have happening, like let's say you're like, oh, I don't want this 3D thing to be happening anymore. Here's a not so secret. The third 3D is done. It's been crumbling. Like, I don't know what people are referring to when they talk about 3D being alive, because it's dead. It's dead. The bridge has already been shown to us. Some of us are already, on the either walking on the bridge or on the other side of the bridge, and we're all here walking through together if we choose to, because we're sovereign beings, we get to choose. So know that if you are still connecting to your fear around what's happening in the world, right? Know that your concern, your thinking about it is giving it energy. It is giving it life. If you don't want to energize that timeline, which is dead, then you get to energize the timeline that you do want, which is all about, it's called the primary timeline, which is the timeline that's connected to your truth, right? So it's like connected to you with love, to sovereignty, to God, like all the good stuff, right? So that's your primary timeline. It's your truth. And that is what you get to energize instead. Okay? Another thing of why it's vital for light workers now to be connected to your sovereignty, which is the topic of today. If you're just joining us now, the topic of today is how being in your sovereignty transforms your fear as a light worker. If you are not connected to your sovereignty, you are not connected to your truth, and the fear is running you instead of you running you. And I know that when I first learned that many years ago, that was such a bitter pill to swallow. I thought, excuse me, you were telling me what now? I was so offended. But, then I was like, okay, it's true. So I'm just sharing that with you now because maybe you're there right now, right? And if you're just joining us right now, I already covered what sovereignty is, so you might want to check that out on replay. And I already talked about what being in your sovereignty looks like. And now I'm on why it's vital for light workers now to be connected to it. So when you're connected to your sovereignty, you are connected to your truth. And when you're not connected with your sovereignty, you're not connected with your truth. And then your fear is running you, right? So don't let your fear run you. And you can know that your fear is running you if the decisions you're making are from a place of fear, right? Like, oh, I'm not going to be loved if I don't do this, or I'm going to lose something if I don't do this, or something's going to happen to me if I don't do this, or I will not be supported if I don't do this, right? Those are all things of fear and scarcity, because the truth is we are all supported. We really are. But if you are believing that you are not, if you're believing that you're not, if you're believing that you must control things because you don't trust that you're going to be supported, then that's something to look into. That's part of where your fear is running you. And you get to run yourself, not your fear, right? Because we have our fears, they get to take the back seat, and you get to be the one to drive. So here are some ways to transform your fear into sovereignty. And so, this is something that I covered in my post from last week, but it's so important that I wanted to make sure that you got this information. So one of the first things you can do is connect with your power. This is something you can declare, so like those I am statements that are really, really important are really, really effective. So they're very sovereignty affirming affirmations. But they're more like declarations. When you're talking about the I am, you're basically speaking things into truth, such as I am sovereign. That's a great one. I am sovereign. I am free. I am God, right? And that is another thing too. And I know I get a lot of flack for that, but I'm going to say it again because it's the truth, right? There's something very popular and trending going on right now where it's encouraged to disconnect yourself from yourself, to disconnect yourself from others, and to disconnect yourself from God. And the truth is that you get to be connected to all of that, starting with yourself, right? And since you are an extension of God, you too are a sovereign being, which is what that whole sovereignty thing is about, right? To learn, to remember that you are the sovereign being, and therefore you're this extension of God, right? I mean, you were created in that form, right? As were we all. We just forgot, and that was part of our programming too, especially for Lightworkers. So that is something that's really important, to connect with your power, number one, when you want to transform your fear into sovereignty. And so there are so many ways you can do that, connecting to your true power, not the artificial manipulated power, which was promoted by the, let's just call it the patriarchal old paradigm, right? That is now crumbling. So, it always makes me crack up when people like leave comments on my posts saying, well, that's great, Margarita, but, what about the patriarchy? And it's like, it's dead, honey. It's dead. I don't know what you're referring to. So there are so many ways to connect with your power. You can start with healing work, right? Getting curious about, what does my power look like to be in my true sovereignty, right? Connecting with your higher self by just having dialogue, right? I mean, you are connected to your higher self. Just because you don't feel like it, maybe in a certain given moment, doesn't mean you're not. You're always connected. And you can always engage your higher self as well as the rest of your team of light through asking questions and just even saying, hey, I could use some support right now, right? I could use some help right now in regards to XYZ. Help me with XYZ, right? The I am statements that I mentioned, and there are so many other ways. And of course, there's one way that I offer with my clients for that deeper work is those power activations. Because the power activations are like, they source the new earth frequency, the new paradigm, which means that they're accelerated. And I mean accelerated in all terms of that. Like, it doesn't take a long time. It can happen, within an afternoon. And, it's life-changing, and it happens very quickly, right? And so I'm seeing a question here, and I'm going to, I don't always catch all the comments and questions, but I do see this: how to get a message from angels and higher self in a dream. Well, I mean, if you dream about them, then, and if there's a message for you, then you get to experience that, remember that, and have an intention around remembering that, right? And you can also connect with them in meditation. You can connect with them when you're not in meditation. You don't need to have a special conduit in order to access them, because they're connected with you, right? Like, your higher self is you, right? So you don't need to have special access, so to speak. So just know you can just, while you're having your coffee in the morning, I don't drink coffee, but like, I mean, if I did, I'd be like, connecting with my team of light, right? Excuse me. So yeah, that's one really quick way to connect with your power. Not only get connected to it, but to get activated into it, because it's one thing to be aware of your power. It's another thing to be embodied in your power. And that is what the power activations that I provide actually does. So that's number one, connect with your power in terms of how to transform your fear into sovereignty. Number two, clear your attachments to pain and suffering. And I know this is also probably very unpopular with a lot of light workers for me to even say this, but it is the truth. Anywhere where you are still triggered, where you are still holding fear and trauma and in victimhood around your experience, is where you are still leaking out your power. Because these areas where you are still attached to fear, still attached to suffering, still attached to pain, is where you can get manipulated by negative energies. And when I mean by manipulation, right, like, it's interference, the static that is completely not connected and aligned with your sovereignty. So yeah, and then it interferes with your highest good. It interferes with your purpose and what you're here creating in the world, right? So heal and clear these areas in your life, knowing that this can transform quickly, because that's another thing. A lot of light workers are still stuck in the old paradigm of, it takes time. There's a process. And yes, there's a process, and it doesn't need to take time. It can take time if that's what you think and are saying it will take, right? Because if you think that's what it takes, then that's the path you're going to take, right? But if you instead tap into those new earth frequencies and say, oh, actually it doesn't need to take that long. Again, this is why my power activation work is really effective, because it's like bam, 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 done, addressed, cleared, embodied, solid, right? So when you are clearing your attachments to pain and suffering, you allow yourself to activate your power potential, because then you're no longer hindered or pulled down or weighed down by the heaviness of those denser frequencies, those lower density frequencies. Number 3, keep choosing your light. And by the way, too, in regards to number 2, clearing your attachments to pain and suffering, what will also happen when you do that is that you will strengthen your auric field, your energy field, and you will get stronger in your energy. Because if you're still in this whole thing of we are oppressed, I'm in struggle, then guess what? You are going to be feeling oppressed, and you will be in struggle, right? And I get that can be a trendy thing to say right now, right? And I get it. Back in the day when I was, a community activist, I always talked about being in struggle. I always talked about being hindered and oppressed by the man, right? And then I took my power back, deciding that my power does not depend on what other people decide to do in their lives. I choose to be in my own power, right? And you get to have that too, because your power comes from within you. So going on to number 3, keep choosing your light. Being in self-mastery means being committed to your light, which means choosing it at every given opportunity, not just when you're having a good day. This is a good question here. Just caught this. Love Six Sophie says, people and things will fall away as well during this time. Absolutely. Absolutely. And don't fight it. If that happens, don't fight it. It is for your highest good. It will probably break your heart a little bit, but it is for your highest good. And maybe you don't feel that right now, but on the other side, liberation. Okay. And higher frequency people to surround you and support you in your life. Okay. Jenny asks, how do you start pulling away from those fears and trauma? You make a decision. You make a decision because you have made a decision, like not you personally, but when people are in that trauma and that pain and that fear, that's a choice. Being in your fear and your trauma and your pain and your suffering is a choice. Because some people have the same experiences in terms of life situations, but they can have different perceptions of how that might be happening. And, so like, something that might be traumatic and crazy and outlandish to one person may be just something that someone just, tweaks their life around. They do some tweaks so that they can transform whatever they're experiencing around that, and then they move on with their life, right? So it depends on how you are approaching that. So make a choice, make a different choice. So if you've chosen fear, then you get to choose differently, and that choice is up to you. So you get to make a different choice to make a decision, and it could be very simple, like I choose to clear my pain and suffering. And there are so many ways you can say it. I choose to clear my pain and suffering. I am clearing my pain and suffering. I have cleared my pain and suffering, right? So many different ways to phrase this. And, when you really make that statement, that is a decision that you have made. So that's how you do that. So when you keep choosing your light, we're on point number 3 in terms of how to transform your fear into sovereignty. Being in light and self-mastery means being committed to your light, which means choosing it at every given moment. You are having an opportunity to do so, even if it's scary and others may not approve. right? And don't give me this thing of, well, I'm an empath. I feel things, right? I'm an empath too. I feel things as well. But when you are an empowered empath versus, an empath who's in victimhood, you know that this is a superpower to feel other people's feelings. And this is how you get to really pick up on how you can be of service, not to solve everyone's problems. That's not your job as an empath, right? Your job as an empath is not to pick up everyone's problems and then solve them all. Everyone's a sovereign being, even if sometimes they may not appear that way. And that is something that you get to allow them to have because it's their choice, right? You're welcome. So someone's saying, please give any suggestions to overcome this. I'm sharing them now, so make sure you write some notes, right? So when you are committed to your light, again, it's not about only doing so on the good days, because you're not going to always have good days every single day, right? Some light workers are like, but I'm having sometimes these days where I don't feel so good. Yes, it's called doing the work. It's called going deeper, getting curious about it, clearing out that shit, right? So know that it's not going to be, when you're on this light worker journey or on this spiritual path, it's not going to look, tulips and rainbows all the time. There's going to be some gut-wrenching moments that you get to still take a stand for yourself, even when maybe you're not going to be the most popular person in your community by saying so or doing so or acting so, right? You get to speak your truth authentically and choose it, because otherwise you're choosing fear, because you're always making a choice. You're either choosing fear or you're choosing love. So in that moment, what are you choosing? And that could be the simple way to decide, is this a good decision for me? Is this a right decision for me? Ask yourself, are you choosing it for love or for fear? Or from a place of fear? Or from a place of love? So that's really, really important. Whenever you make the choice that is aligned with your light rather than fear, then you are actually opening up your frequency for more and more light to enter your life. When you choose fear over and over again, someone's saying, damn, Margarita, why you gotta call it out like that? That's how I do, my loves. That's how I do. And so you just really become more and more light when you focus on your light. When you keep choosing your light, you keep choosing love, you get more and more love. You get more and more light. If you keep choosing fear, like, oh, I can't do this, or I'm scared to do this, I'm scared to do that, I can't possibly do this because I'm afraid of this, right? When you have that kind of context and that's how you're living your life, you will create more of that, right? So that's number 3. Number 4, develop critical thinking about what you are being shown by the old matrix. So as I mentioned earlier, the old matrix is crumbling, right? The patriarchy, the sometimes, when I was back in the day when I was a punk rocker, I'm like, the man, capitalist patriarchy, right? That was my jam. So it like tickles me when some of the people who make comments on my posts are like, the capitalist patriarchy, and it's like, oh, I did that too, right? And back in that time, it was alive, right? But it was already starting to crumble. It is now crumbling, right? It is crumbling. I mean, it's falling apart. It really is. And so when you're still energizing it with this thing of it's alive, it's happening, in our life, it is, if that's what you want to energize, if that's what you want to keep energizing as reality for you, right? Then you are keeping alive a timeline that's already dead. Okay? So there is a greater divide now between the old paradigm, which is also called the old matrix, which is based on fear, manipulation, greed, suffering, artificial power, right? And then you've got the new paradigm, the new matrix, which is connected to our sovereignty, connected to your power, your sovereignty as a spiritual being in human form in this world. It is about love and, yes, light, but not in a passive way. It is about the rising up of the frequency of humanity's consciousness. That is what is the new paradigm, right? So, and that new paradigm is also connected to you connecting with your divine power and trusting your body, trusting your intuition, trusting your immune system, trusting being connected to the godlight within you, right? And creating your own reality, believing in your own reality that you're creating, believing in the reality that you want, and believing the fact that you are a creator being, because you are a very powerful creator being. Why do you think this fear paradigm, as the old paradigm is also called, is all full of fear? Because if you are still resonating at that vibration of fear and you're still triggered and all that, you are still open to that programming. And so that's why you get to develop that critical thinking within yourself for yourself of what that means to you. You know, like whatever you're seeing in the world, just question the truth that you are being shown. And so that is how you can start developing critical thinking around what the old paradigm is showing you. And also connect with your intuition. Because when you're operating from a place of fear, you're not trusting your intuition. And if I know you, Lightworker, you've got intuition. You know, maybe you're, really excelling in that field. Maybe you're still developing it. Maybe you're somewhere in the middle. But when your intuition is strong and you trust your intuition, and more importantly, you act on the intuition that you are being given from your intuitive self, then you are able to see your truth. If you are still operating from that fear, you are going to believe everything that you are fed. When you are developing critical thinking of what the old matrix is showing you as truth, and I invite you to question that, allow yourself to connect with that God self within yourself and trust your intuition, the truth of your intuition, not what your fear is and then saying that it's intuition. Because a lot of light workers who are still invisible do that. They think it's their intuition, but it's their fear talking. That's not your intuition. There's a difference. So that was number 4, develop critical thinking about what you're being shown by the old matrix. And number 5, commit to raising your frequency on a regular basis. Because one part of the equation is clearing out all that, old stuff that no longer serves you. And then the next step is raising your frequency, right? On a regular basis, consistently, right? Because it's not just raise your frequency until you feel good, because this is not about getting a hit, right? This is not just getting bliss and you're done for the day, right? It's about cultivation. Because I hear this a lot from light workers who are like, oh yeah, I'm totally in my power because I had a vision, right? And so then they're like, yeah, I'm in my frequency, I'm high vibe, right? But can you replicate that? Do you have a practice? Are you cultivating it on a regular basis? So even on the days when you feel like crap and you don't want to get out of bed, those days I'm talking about because I have them too, right? That you still get up because you are committed to your light. You are committed to raising the frequency of not only your light, but also of those around you. Because if you're a light worker, you have a huge purpose. So I've got a good question here. Is there an exercise to tune in more to the intuition rather than fear? So let's say you are presented with a choice and you are invited to make a decision. One way to learn if you are making a choice from fear versus intuition is this in alignment with my soul? You can ask yourself that question. Is this in alignment with my soul? If it is, then you get to step up into that, even if you are scared as heck, right? So, because just because you feel fear doesn't mean it's bad for you. Sometimes you feeling that fear is what's required so that you can choose yourself even when things are scary. So, feeling fear does not mean that that is your intuition talking. You know, there's a difference between like getting warned that you're about to jump off a cliff and just not being comfortable with something, right? If you're truly in danger, your intuition will alert you to that. If you're just feeling fearful because you're being invited to the next level of your being and it's just simply uncomfortable, that is not your intuition. So if it's aligned with your soul's path, and that comes from listening to your heart, then you will be able to really discern if you're coming from a place of intuition, because if you truly listen to your intuition, you're going to be like, okay, this thing that I'm being shown right now is aligned with my soul's purpose, my being. And maybe it's going to scare you a lot, but you know that it is aligned. That's your intuition. That is in alignment with you. If, on the other hand, you're saying, oh no, I couldn't do that because what would people think of me, right? Or I can't possibly do that. I'm not capable to do that, right? All of those words is connected to a belief and a perception that you are limited and that you are incapable or that you are unworthy or unlovable, which is false. It's totally false. So, you know, and the reason why I share this with you, because for some of you, you're like, okay, you know, I get that, Margarita, you know, raising your vibration. But here's why I share this with you, to cultivate this on a regular way, because the collective is being bombarded by toxins every day, by all types of pollution, not just what's in the air, right? It's also the vibration that is being sent out into the collective. There's the vibration, there's the psychic attacks, there's the different toxins on physical, emotional, psychic, energetic, mental levels that we are receiving and may not even be aware that we're receiving on a regular basis. And so that's why keeping a cultivation practice of raising your frequency, not to get bliss, because that's not the objective of raising your frequency. It is to awaken and heighten your consciousness so that you become this sovereign individual who operates through life as a sovereign being. So, you know, how this can look like when you are raising your frequency, that could look like, you know, for me, one of my ways to do that is non-negotiable meditation every morning. Doesn't matter what my schedule looks like that day. Doesn't matter if I were to take a flight at 5 in the morning. I wake up earlier to fit in my meditation. And because that's my non-negotiable, and it connects me with myself, connects me with my purpose, connects me with my higher self, connects me with my star family, etc., my team of light, you know, and really centers and grounds me. And that is my priority. So it's really about, what are you deciding to prioritize in your life? You know, because I get some people are going to be like, oh, I don't have the time to do that. I don't have the money to do that. You know, I can't figure out how to do that, right? And it's all about priorities. You know, it's not that we don't have time. It's about that something else is a higher priority. And that's why you don't perceive yourself as having that time. So allow yourself to prioritize yourself. Okay? And that looks like receiving love in all forms, not on a conditional way, not like, I would like to have love, except from these individuals, or as long as it looks like this, right? That's called conditional love. That's conditional. You're putting conditions on how you're receiving love, right? But when you're truly open to love in all forms, because it is the highest vibration, and love is power, power is love. That's one of the codes of power, of true power. Then you are really open to the co-creation that the universe is having with you. And when you are raising your frequency on a regular basis, not only do you feel awesome, right? Because you're cultivating this understanding of your life, right? And it's also connected to your life choices, you know? Like, I mean, every day you're making choices. Every moment of the day you're making choices, from what am I having for breakfast? You know, what am I going to wear, you know, for my day? Those are all choices. And then you have other choices too, like, you know, do I need to hire an assistant? Do I need to upgrade, my flow of how I serve my clients? Those are also decisions. And when you make decisions that are aligned and you are consistently raising your frequency and vibration from a place of cultivation, you are actually improving your immune system, believe it or not. And I say this as a licensed acupuncturist also, that you are building and strengthening your immune system because stress weakens your immune system. Fear weakens your immune system. Strengthening, clearing out the fear from your system and strengthening your vibration all serves to build your immune system, to build your power, to build your light. Someone's sharing, we should then pick one non-negotiable alignment method technique to do every day. I love that. And absolutely, I agree with you. At least one. I have many, but that's because I've been at this for a while, right? And so I have like many touch points. And that's kind of what you want to ultimately do, is have many touch points throughout your day, of how you want to be living your life, about the frequency you want to be living at, right? And that is a very intentional way to live. So just to recap on what we talked about today, today's topic is how being in your sovereignty transforms your fear as a light worker. And so I talked about the definition of sovereignty, what it is. I talked about what being in your sovereignty looks like in the earthly realm, right? Because when you're a light worker who is empowered, you're not just out there in the cosmos and the ether, like only speaking to your star family, the angels, galactics, and all those amazing people, right? You are also grounded and earthed and anchored into Gaia's frequency, and you are grounded in who you are, right? So you're not just like off there in the ether, you're grounded as well. And so why it's vital for light workers now to be connected to it. I covered some points on that. And then also I shared the 5 ways of how to transform your fear into sovereignty. And of course, there's more than just 5, but I'm just kind of keeping it concise for you so you have some actionable ways to open up this dialogue within yourself, right? So my challenge to you is, now that you know the 5 ways to transform your fear into sovereignty, and just to recap, number 1 was connect with your power. Number 2, clear your attachments to pain and suffering. Number 3, keep choosing your light. Number 4, develop critical thinking about what you are being shown by the old matrix. And number 5, commit to raising your frequency on a regular basis. So my challenge to you now is, which of these 5 are you going to commit to this week? It's Monday, fresh start, new start. You can create brand new from here. What do you choose to step forward into for this week? So feel free to put down number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whichever one you choose. And I'd love to hear someone very ambitious is saying all 5. Awesome, awesome. Well, I wouldn't recommend start with one of them, right? Start with one with an intention for all 5, right? Because if you might have an intention to do all 5, that is awesome. But it might be a little overwhelming at first to do all 5 at the same time, unless you're further along and these are more like just tweaks for you, then that's awesome. Okay. So releasing my attachment to pain and suffering is my absolute top priority. I love that. Beautiful. Another ambitious being saying all 5. Stevie Lynn is saying all 5. Monica is saying the second one, which is clear your attachments to pain and suffering. I love that so many of you are choosing number 2. And there's another one for number 2. Yeah, and that's such an important one. So I love that you are really being cognizant about what you feel you need right now, right? And what you're committing to. Because when you commit to yourself about what you are going to do to up-level yourself and invest in that higher frequency for yourself, then that's when the changes happen, right? Because it doesn't happen like someday, or when things settle down, or when you lose some weight, or when the children go to college, or, I've heard all the excuses, right? You choose it now. It doesn't matter what's going on, because there's a lot going on in the world. I mean, I'm not, that's not a newsflash. There's a lot going on in the world. And that's why it's even more important for you to be in your sovereign power. Because first of all, you deserve it. Number one, that's always the number one. You deserve it. It's yours. It belongs to you. You get to wake that up. And what I just discussed was some ways to wake it up. And also because when you are in your sovereignty, your vibration exudes and ripples out into the world, right? I mean, that's the reason why you found me, right? You picked up on my vibration and you hopped on, right? And then called it coincidence that, oh, I was just asking for this, right? Because I hear that a lot. So know that you make these things happen. And if you're not okay with what things are showing up around you, know that you have the power to change what is happening in your life. Desiree's also claiming number 2. Hi, Desiree. I love that. And I saw someone else chose committing to raising their frequency. I love that. Someone else says, I'm ready to open my practice and offer services and a few products. Yahoo! Go get it. Go get it. Someone's asking, will you save this, please? And so know that these lives are always saved on Instagram. I will save them as an IGTV video. On Facebook, it will be on my video page, so you'll always have access to it. So just know that. Okay, beautiful, beautiful. And so I love this. I love that you've declared which one you are committing to for yourself. I mean, I'm not going to be like, knocking on your window in the middle of the night saying, hey, did you do number 2? That won't be me, right? Because you get to take responsibility and ownership of what you're creating. And so you get to have that. You get to be the one who claims that and who accomplishes that. And I know that you can. Someone is claiming number 5, again with raising the frequency. I love this. So far, the popular votes have been with number 2, clearing your attachments to pain and suffering, with a high runner-up of number 5, committing to raising your frequency on a regular basis. Jennifer, yeah, she's already explored all of these before, so now she's doing tweaking at this point. She says little tweaks to all 5. I love that for you, Jennifer. You're awesome. Clapping you up. Okay, so I hope that's been of service to you, everyone. And welcome to some people who are just hopping on now. And also at the same time, we have completed our discussion for today, the topic being how being in your sovereignty transforms your fear as a light worker. So if you're just popping in now, make sure that you check out the replay, and it will be available on Instagram and also on Facebook. And yes, and I'm seeing here, questioning the old matrix and declaring what's best for me instead. Yes, go get it. Go get it. Go get it. All right. So, and my invitation to you is, if you are a striving or empowered light worker who's heart-centered, very much connected to your purpose, and you're ready for the next step. Hi, Roxana. Good to see you here. And you're ready for the next step of stepping into the next level of who you are as a powerful being on this planet, then DM me and let me know what you are here to claim, what you are here to create at the next level of your power in the world, and let's talk about it. And so if that resonates for you, if you are serious and ready to go into deeper transformational work, to really get some acceleration around whatever you're clearing out, whatever you want to activate in your life, whatever you want to have support on, I am here for you. That's my jam. So if that's you, if you want support, if you are serious about being supported in deep transformational work, DM me, okay? In the meantime, much love, light, and power to you. Have a wonderful, empowered week full of choices that prioritize you. Okay, everyone, have a wonderful week.